and come back this way. So at that end, we have Sean, who's one half of Thunderlips, which is a directing duo, with Alix Whittaker, who is a producer and we have had a long association. Filmmaker Hweiling, who is a writer, director, producer, multi-hyphenate, everything. And Guy Pigden, who is also somebody that I've known for quite a long time. And Guy's a truly independent filmmaker in my view, and is very inspirational as well. So I'm going to get them to talk a little bit about who they are, what they've done to get them to where they are now, and then we'll get into a little bit of the topic at hand and some other things. So we can start at that end. Sean.
Hello everybody, my name's Sean, one half of the directing duo Thunderlips. I'll try and keep this really fast. I came to New Zealand in 2006, where I went to South Seas, the film school, which was just 10 months. They tell you what a close-up is, what an over-shoulder, you know, there's like some stuff you can then build on. And then I just made some very, very low-budget music videos for a few years, and held boom poles and just pretty much did anything I could get for whatever money was available. And then about 12 years ago, Alix and her partner, Jordan Windsor, asked me if I'd shoot a short film. I told them no, absolutely not, I don't like the script, this is not good. And then Jordan, at the same time, was telling Alix, I've seen this guy's work, he is terrible, don't get him to shoot it. Because I was kind of more of a camera person back then. Anyway, we both capitulated, we shot the short film together, and something just clicked beautifully, creatively. And we've just been making stuff since then, which is about 12 years ago. We made about 15 music videos, and then we did some commercials. And then 2 years ago, almost to the day, we made our short film called Help, I'm Alien Pregnant. And now we're shooting our feature, which is called Mum, I'm Alien Pregnant, and Alix is the producer of that.
Kia ora, my name is Alix Whittaker. I'm an independent producer based in Auckland. I started making short films coming out of the theatre scene. I was stage managing a play for a friend of mine, Oliver Page, and he said, I think you might be a great film producer, do you want to produce my short film? And he had like $2,000 saved up, and I said yes. And we took a crew of 16 people to the Hawke's Bay and shot for 10 days on $2,000. And I look back on that now and I understand the importance of your naivety when you're early on making films, because like there's no way I could do that now. But it was super fun, and that film ended up playing in the New Zealand International Film Festival in front of a feature film, and watching it with the audience was like the moment that I knew that I wanted to be a film producer for the rest of my life. Coming out of that, I found myself in a time where I had a lot of people around me who were really keen to make work, but we couldn't find any funding. There wasn't a lot of funding around, and so we all banded together and took on the lease of what was like an old crumbly rest home that wasn't safe to live in anymore, and we all lived there together, like made it safe enough for us. But what that meant was that our weekly costs came down far enough that we could make a lot of self-funded short films and music videos. And we lived there for 7 years and made almost 100 music videos and 20 odd short films, a couple web series and a couple in self-funded feature films. And that was really like where we learnt how to make films and how to do what we do. And then coming out of that, I've been trying to focus on how to finance feature films to make with those filmmakers and others. And that's been a real big journey, but has led us to where we are today, making Mum, I'm Alien Pregnant, which is funded by the New Zealand Film Commission, and we have a local distributor and an international sales agent on that as well, which has been a really interesting and fun experience. That's who we are today.
Kia ora koutou, ko Hweiling toko ingoa. I am a migrant from Malaysia, so most of my upbringing is Malaysia. I speak 5 languages really badly. It's hard to explain what it means to grow up in Malaysia versus New Zealand. So filmmaking is non-existent, and so I call New Zealand my enabler because everything that's happened in this country. I'm a bit of a chaotic person in terms of how I ended up in this space, I guess. I production managed, I produced. I got angry at a street preacher, so I had this mockumentary about Jedi street preaching at a corner of Queen Street one year. And this is before YouTube, so it was a downloadable link. But with the existence of the internet, I guess that's the way I got into the industry, or just making stuff. It ended up being like a drug I kept returning to. And the thing that really popped in my head creatively, because I was very much a logistics person, was the anthology ABCs of Death. We were one of the finalists, and I can't prove this, but our short was watched millions and millions of times, and it was a concept of mine. And just seeing what was in my brain on screen really excited me, and it is horrible and disgusting, and it felt freeing as well. From there onwards, I would say that there was a conscious... I didn't feel like I could tell short stories in New Zealand because I was not from New Zealand. And I looked at all the short films during that time. I was like, that's all not me. And then there was a change in perspective going that we're not hearing from women or POCs, and I just said yes to everything. And looking back at what I've done, I'm like, oh, I have gotten a lot of funding. and how I got it, I don't know, I guess. The stories I offer are kind of interesting. I've got a seed grant for a feature horror called Grafted that played in the NZIFF recently. I got the Women's Short Horror Film Fund, and that's because I also have a 45-second short horror film that at 16 mils within the first year. I got the Unreal Engine Film Fund about stuff, and then I got the Koperiho Fresh Shorts short film Vivi, which played in this festival, and will be playing at South by Southwest Sydney next year. This sounds so, oh my god, I'm kind of embarrassed. I do have also another seed fund, and so I'm writing another feature about a nihilistic Asian grandmother. So that's where I was, this is what I'm doing. That's kind of the guy. Thank you. Okay.
Guy. Hello everyone. My name's Pigden. I've been sort of making films for about 20, maybe a little bit more than 20 years now. But I'm a writer-director. I sort of started off making films with my friends and my producing partner, Hweiling, who's in the audience. And we made a lot of low-budget sort of comedy stuff together, skits together, web series together. We were sort of at the start of YouTube, where we had a couple of our videos sort of blow up on YouTube. In that very early time of YouTube when there was like no money or no anything involved. And we sort of made a web series. We had a lot of the work that I got in the industry at the very beginning was writing work. And so I knew, well, I didn't really know, but I sort of had an idea like, okay, I have some talent in writing, but I want to parlay that into directing as well. I don't want to just write, but these are some encouraging things. You know, we had a TV series that was optioned, and it was actually going to be produced by Robin Scholes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Robin. And we directed, the pilot episode was directed by Michael Hurst. And this was all when we were sort of 24, 25. end well, like as in the pilot didn't turn out very good. You know, we were very inexperienced and like nothing sort of came of it. That was sort of my first brush with, I guess, the industry. And then we sort of made a web series about the making of that, which we just made ourselves, which again did quite well on YouTube and sort of just helped elevate us a little bit, I think. And then from that, I was also doing a little bit of writing work for some producers up here in Auckland. I was still based in Dunedin. Dunedin is where I'm originally from. And around that time, I met a producer called Zoe Hobson in Dunedin, and I pitched her one of my film ideas, which was about real zombies attacking a zombie film set. And that is a very easy concept to sort of understand and get behind if you're going to get behind it. And from that sort of idea, we successfully got the first round of the Escalator Initiative, which was to give $250,000 to 4 feature films from new first-time filmmakers, because there's a bit of a catch-22 in the industry at the time where you couldn't direct any film commission film if you hadn't already directed a film. And it was sort of like, well, how is anyone gonna, they didn't trust anyone who wasn't a director who directed on a certain level, but then how would you ever get to that level? So the idea behind the Escalator Initiative was to give that opportunity to some of these sort of inexperienced filmmakers, and we made I Survived the Zombie Holocaust from that, which was this feature film. It was a very difficult experience that sort of ultimately, it was meant to be finished in a year, and it took 4 and a half. And then from there, that actually sort of did really quite well in festivals. We sold it internationally. We did all the right things, but not to the degree that some of my other contemporaries did. So I was in the same block of 4 as Housebound. And so everyone knows Housebound, but no one knows I Survived the Zombie Holocaust. We went to a lot of the same festivals, we did a lot of the same things, but one was seen at a certain level and one wasn't. And so kind of my career then was sort of like, okay, that classic Mark Duplass quote, the cavalry is not coming, and the film commission is not really, doesn't really care, and so what are you going to do now? And so that's when we sort of went back because a $250,000 film, as most people know, feels like very much an indie film. But we sort of went back to our indie roots, and we made a lot of independent stuff. We made another feature film called Older, which we made for about $10,000. We made a few web series, made shorts. We just made a lot of stuff in the indie world, and then sort of have now just looped back around to be part of a Catalyst short, which was funded by the Film Commission, which is called New Followers, which is premiering here along with Help, I'm Alien Pregnant. And it's just had its debut at Monster Fest over in Melbourne as well, and that was the first piece of funding that I received since 2010, and it's 2024 now, or it was 2023. So, it's a long time between drinks, and in that time we had to become very self-sufficient if we wanted to create, but we also had to think about filmmaking probably in a different way, or the realities of filmmaking in New Zealand in a realistic way, and so that's where I'm sort of at now.
Which we will get onto. So I think you now have got the picture. The reason I've known these guys for quite a few years, all of them, is because they've all been around now for quite a few years, and they've been doing a lot in the time that they have been around. Alix, as she said, coming out of a sort of a collective and now producing her, it's not your first one, is it?
It's my first film commission.
Yeah, first film commission funded feature with Sean, which is your first feature. Hweiling, really an immigrant, as she says, to New Zealand, has found her pathway, not without a lot of knocks, I have to say, but has now a place and is prolific. I have to say she's very prolific. And Guy, who, as he's just described, he's made 3 features now, pretty much all by himself with his mates, carrying on through all of those learnings. But let's get to the topic of short to feature. So I just want a yes/no answer. Do you need to make a short before you make a feature? Let's quickly run down the panel here.
Yes.
No.
Depends.
Guy?
I would say no.
Okay, let's deal with the no's, because those are the ones I'm more interested in. Alix, why not?
I think if you want to make a feature film funded by the New Zealand Film Commission, absolutely you do need to make a short film first, 100%. But if you want to self-fund and make a feature film completely independently, you can do that before making a short film.
Great. Hweiling, depends.
That was the answer I was going to go for. It was whether you want to be part of the system or not. If you don't want to be part of the system, just do whatever you want, you know? Yeah.
Okay.
And I might just add to that, there might be a way to circumnavigate the system if you had done, for instance, I think they might now, especially the Film Commission, in the way their perception is changing, they might say if you'd done like a really good web series or something, that would be, yes, you have to have produced a piece of content. I think the type of content that is changing and may not have to be a short.
Okay, let's talk about the system, because various people will have various levels of knowledge about the system, but I'll tell you what I think. And Esther and Morgan are in the room, and they're part of the system now. Okay, the system doesn't have a lot of money. They've just cut back hugely on staff. They've cut back their funding. They've essentially committed only to funding 8 films a year, although, you know, there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. They're not funding shorts at the moment, except for Catalyst, so they've just put out a call for Catalyst. If everybody knows what Catalyst is, it's a higher budget short that is meant to have some relevance in some way, shape or form, perhaps, but at least a script that can then go on and be developed into a feature. There's no funding for shorts. So that means basically you've got to come up with your own funding unless you go to Day One. Day One's the only one with money at the moment, so put that in your notebook.
And just a little plug there, this current RFP for Day One is the first RFP where 2 films will be funded by filmmakers over 30 years old. So the funding cap on that funding has been lifted for 2 slots only.
Yeah, but there are conditions, so go to the Day One website and you'll be able to figure out what those are. So essentially we're in an environment now where there's not much funding available. If you want to make films, you need to fund them yourself. There is a system for funding features at the moment, both documentary and narrative, through the Film Commission, but it's going to be incredibly competitive because not that many films are going to get made at the moment because there's not much government money available for feature filmmaking. So let's talk about how do you go about funding shorts and maybe features if you're having to fund it yourself. So why don't you guys tell me about your experiences of how you put together the funding for your projects. Guy, why don't you start?
Yeah, well, for us, I'm sure everyone is going to say this, but crowdfunding is, a tool that a lot of filmmakers are going to be using and perhaps be dependent on to sort of try and raise funds. We did crowdfunding before it was kind of cool, if you know what I mean. Like now there's a Kickstarter every week for one of your fellow filmmakers, and I hope you all contribute. However, when we did it, it was actually I was like, hey, have you heard about this crowdfunding thing? The New Zealand versions of that didn't exist. This was back in 2013. And so we ran a crowdfunding campaign for our second feature, and we also used our YouTube money. So our YouTube had been making a little bit of money by that time, and we'd just built up this, we hadn't used it for anything, so we used the money that we'd made from YouTube combined with our Kickstarter to sort of get the ball rolling on our feature, and sort of at least get it our goal was to do it in phases, in the sense that the first phase is like, just get it in the can. Just shoot it, spend the money shooting it, and worry about the post later. Obviously that is a problematic way to do things, because the post still has to be done, and it's still going to cost some degree of money or a lot of time. And in our case, it cost a lot of time. And so that was our sort of approach. We also ran another crowdfunding campaign a little bit later on for a web series that we did, which was again sort of trying to raise. That was, we tried to factor in post-production on that one, but we still kind of got caught a little bit short at the end, and sort of ran out of money, as you tend to do on these sort of indie films. But that was sort of our approach, was a sort of a hybrid of that. And obviously the other one is, you know, maxing out credit cards, which again, some people say is a terrible, you know, I was paying off a credit card that I used for Older, my second feature film, for like 7 years. Like, I never paid it off. I was just paying the interest on it for like 7 years, and then ultimately I thankfully paid it off now. But if that's, so, you know, again, what's the strategy you make? It's gonna be a lot of sacrifice, basically, some capacity. Those Kickstarters really have to be, it can't just be like, hey, give me your money. It has to be like, hey, give me your money, here's what we're gonna give you. And it has to be, hey, if you'd like to give us some money, let me tell you about where it's gonna go, what we're gonna do with it, and why you should believe in this thing. We showed her like a proof of concept for our feature, to kind of sell people on the idea that like, hey, we can do this.
One thing, and Esther, you may like to correct me if I'm wrong, if she's in the room, I can't quite see. But as I understand it, the finishing fund for features is still available from the Film Commission. So that means if you shoot your feature and you get it in the can, if it's viewed as good enough by the Film Commission, then you can apply for a $60,000 grant to do the finishing of it. So I believe that is still, at this point, available.
Can I just jump in on that one? So just as a aside to that one, we did apply for that and we were rejected, but we were rejected on the grounds, or one of the grounds, that it wasn't having a cinema release. And that was one of the criteria at the time. I'm not sure, I think that might be changing, and I hope it is, because we can't all be releasing our films in cinemas, especially indie films. That's not where they're going to be seen and make their money. But that's just a sort of a little aside, where we sort of were hoping for that, and then sort of didn't get it and had to rethink.
That's a good point. I won't get into it, but it may be reviewed, that position, but I believe it's still in place at this point. Hweiling.
Half the time I'm trying to organize my thoughts because I have lots, but they're all over the place. First and foremost, to be in New Zealand and to get funding from the government is a gift. It doesn't exist that much in Malaysia and other countries where it's incredibly competitive and only the upper class privileged people get access to it. I find that in New Zealand it's liberating. Literally, anyone with a good story has access to this, first and foremost. Let me think. Secondly, previous stuff that I did, well, I went for competition money. There is a small group of us which would make the thing, and I'm like, if we win it, we'll share the money. So I looked out for competitions that had money associated with it. Through Tears for Talk, a company actually reached out to us called Crip TV. They gave us a tiny bit of amount, but they gave us some money to make stuff. So if you make stuff and does do well online, people will reach out. I think it's gotten more complicated these days because you don't know who's reliable or not. Don't talk about AI. Okay. The other thing I do is I am quite strategic with my storytelling. I look at myself and I'm brutally honest about where I sit in the Venn diagram. I am Malaysian, I am in New Zealand, so, and I look at the territories I want to cover as well. So I do come from a perspective of I want to make money. What will make money? And horror really sells. But like, I'm in New Zealand, so what kind of horror can I tell that I'm still in which is relevant to New Zealand as well as international? So all my films are slightly strategic in that sense. Yes, so I would suggest starting from there actually, but also being truthful and brutally honest and sitting in like the dissonance of who you are to create great stories. Yes, I think those are my points.
Alix.
So I think for us, one of the guiding principles behind the Candlelit Clubhouse, where we all lived in this ex-rest home, was this idea that came from this quote from Ira Glass, where he says, and I'm paraphrasing, something like, everyone gets into making work because they have great taste, but in the beginning, the work that you make doesn't quite live up to that taste. There's a big gap, and the only way to close the gap between your taste and your ability is to make a large volume of work. And so the idea in the beginning was about making as much work as possible and learning about how to make it well and how to close that gap. And I think my biggest piece of advice for doing that would be to team up with other people who want to make films. Get a group together, use social media or networking events like this one to find people like you and support each other. Don't be afraid to get in and be the person who's going to do unit or craft for somebody else's short film, and then they'll do it for your film. Use the people who are there who are really willing and keen, and maybe that actress who really wants to be in the film is not necessarily the person you would have picked, but she's here, she's willing. Like, make the film, make the work, learn the lessons that you can learn. And then I would say choose to crowdfund when you've really got something that you are feeling more strategic about, to what Hweiling was saying about, like, you only have so many opportunities to crowdfund. I actually crowdfunded so much early on in my career that I lost a couple of friends over it. They were like, I can't be friends with you anymore. You keep asking me for money for your art and it's awkward and I hate it. I was like, okay, that's fair. Thank you for telling me. You can't crowdfund everything. So be strategic about what you want to crowdfund and make sure that you've gotten to that point where you have closed the gap a little bit, and the thing that you're crowdfunding is a strategic play, and that you can try and make something more from that than just learning how to make films. And then I think when it comes to trying to engage with the system, strategy is hugely important as well. I think one of the things that we do a lot in New Zealand is we're so focused on just trying to make the one project right in front of us, and maybe we do get Film Commission funding or New Zealand On Air funding to make our web series, and then that project is in release and everybody's looking at you going, hey, that's cool, what are you going to make next? And we're all out here being like, give me 3 years and I'll come back to you on that one. And it's just not going to work. Like, the momentum is there when your current project is in distribution, and you need to know what your next project is going to be and be ready to pitch it now, to make the most of that momentum and to get your career kind of moving and lifting.
Sure.
Could you repeat the question, please?
I've even forgot what the hell it was. Sorry. No, it was about how do you fund things when there's no funding available through the system?
Yeah, and it's a tough one because a lot of it comes down to privilege. Like, can we not have a day job for a year and like make the projects we want to do? And it really sucks that a lot of people can't afford to do that. I could. I was really lucky, and I could do passion projects and do bits of work here and there while like making great art that was not giving any return apart from making us better writers, better directors. So like, if you can figure out the way to make lots and lots of work, because that's really the only way you can get better, but at the same time sustain just like your basic needs, then I would say that's like the best place to start. Because if you jump, the reason why I said no to yes to you have to make a short is because if you jump in and make a feature, that's 3 years of your life, and if or more, and if you've never made a short, your feature's probably going to be shit, and so why don't make a shit feature, make 3 shit shorts and then make a great feature.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly what I wanted to move on to. For those of you who were at the session at the Academy, Dino Gorman spoke about the making of his film and how he really didn't want creative interference on his film, which allowed him to do what he wanted to do, and what he did, I think, is a bloody fantastic film, to be honest. However, a lot of people make shitty films. So when you're self-funding it and you don't have people sitting over you trying their best to point out what's wrong with it and trying their best to improve it, which is not always the case, their comments and feedback don't necessarily always improve things. But when you're funding your own films and you're making your own films, how do you avoid making shitty films? Hweiling.
I think it's necessary to make shitty stuff. It gives you permission to fail. This is going to sound so sad. I am a failed Asian, so it's easy for me. I don't have the 4 degrees or the PhD or the piano playing or whatever, so it's all up here. It's all going up from here onwards. I just want to add, I've done 20 years of 48 hours, and that's a great place to just play and have fun and get a movie done in 2 days. You know? I think that's a lot of it. Yeah.
Alix.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ira Glass was right. You have to work your way up from your ability to your taste, and the only way to do that is to make the work and to accept that it's not going to be as good as you wanted it to be. And I think one of the really interesting things about producing, especially when we had the Clubhouse and we had so many people moving through that space, making their first music video, their first short film, and it's really interesting to see the directors in post-production always crushed. It wasn't what they expected it to be, but the ones who kind of come out of that and learn their lessons and take that into the next project, and then the ones who just move on to having a completely different career, and it's kind of makes you or breaks you. But I think that's an important part. You have to make the shitty work and see it and be heartbroken by it and learn your lessons about what you'll do differently next time. And every time you make something, I think it gets better and better and more to your taste, more what you actually wanted to create. Yeah.
Guy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I was actually having this conversation in the other room where you, and it's, also what you said is that actually filmmaking, and this is my experience like universally, so I am self-taught. I didn't go to a film school or anything like that. And I've worked with a lot of film school graduates, and I've been in their films, or I've helped them on films or something like that. And I was just watching them make the same mistakes I made when I was making my first shorts. And just watching them just make exactly this. It didn't matter what they'd done, it didn't matter that they understood the kind of cinematic technique. You would still make all the same mistakes. You make the same mistakes in the edit. You hang on your shots too long. You're not willing, you don't have the discipline to throw stuff out when it doesn't work. And all of these things you come to in time through making bad or just flawed, not necessarily bad, just flawed shorts, web series, whatever. And to think that you have to just be like the greatest filmmaker of all time to kind of skip that step. And if you're not, which most of us aren't, we will all make those mistakes. So you do have to make those mistakes through your shorts, through your short form content to build to that feature. And just as an example, we're about to sort of re-release the zombie film, and I went back and I looked at the edit and I cut 8 minutes from it, and that's 10 years after or actually longer, 10 years after that, And I sort of joke maybe in another 10 years I'll really nail this edit. Because I just didn't have that experience at that time. I wasn't the editor either, but I just didn't have the experience to form my vision, as Ira Glass said, to get it to what I wanted, what I imagined, and what I sort of was capable of doing. So that is just an organic process that all filmmakers have to go through, should accept and be sort of okay with, but a lot of us don't talk about that, and there's also a lot of, we give you one opportunity as a filmmaker and then you don't meet that expectation and see you later. And that, I think, is a bit of an issue within our industry, because those people could be great filmmakers, but they need that time to progress and grow. It can't be a one and done. But the industry is almost not big enough for it to do it any other way.
So I want to talk about collaborators. I'll go back to the film that Dino Gorman spoke about this morning. So he spoke about Dave Garbutt, who was his cinematographer, and he talked about how they devised together a method to shoot that film, which allowed Dave to get the beautiful footage that he got, and I think elevate the film. And so I want to talk about how collaborators can contribute to elevating the quality of the film, particularly editors, because I represent the Directors and Editors Guild, but also because editors can make a significant contribution. So can you talk about your experiences, the collaborators that you've worked with, and how they have contributed to you raising your game as the filmmaker, because you are the key central person as the director, but you're also part of a team. So let's talk about collaborators.
Yeah, I feel like I have a unique perspective because I'm one half of a duo, and it's been absolutely essential to my own progression as a filmmaker to have this creative partner that you trust and you respect, and to have someone there who can tell you that actually this isn't good enough, or they're saying this is great, and then you say, no, this sucks, we need to try harder, we need to make it better. You need objectivity, and if you're not in a duo, or lucky enough to be in a duo like I am, then your collaborators will be providing that, and you have to listen to them, because you may think something is great, but you're just too close to it. You don't have that objectivity, and I really think the reason why our work is so good is that we're always checking in with each other and checking in with the project and the ideas, and we never let anything go through the both of us. It might get through one, but it won't go through both if it's not amazing.
I think collaborators are essential and really do lift things up, and I think we're really lucky to live at the bottom of the world in a small village vibe where actually as a emerging fledgling filmmaker you do have access to all of the best collaborators in the country, and if you make some work, a really cool 48-hour film, for example, and you get into the finals and you send that to this incredible cinematographer that you've always been a massive fan of, or an incredible editor, and you write to them and say, hey, I'd really love to work with you on my next film, there's every chance that they might really enjoy your previous work and say yes. And I think some of the collaborators that we've had in terms of especially cinematographers and editors on work that I've produced for new filmmakers, it's huge, the learning that comes from that collaboration for the filmmakers, and those cinematographers and editors have been exceedingly generous, and I think there's a real sense of what goes around comes around in our small village. People do really want to support you to make films, and they also want to be supported to do their jobs too, so when you are lifted up and you get that commercial representation and you're suddenly making commercials, and now you can hire that cinematographer or that editor who helped you out on your epic short film that got you there, and that does happen here. It's invaluable. They bring so much to directors, and some of the meetings that I've been a part of as a fly on the wall as a producer between cinematographers and directors, or editors and directors, and the questions that they're asking, not just of the story, but of the process and the way that the director is thinking about coming to that, thinking about directing actors, or thinking about the ideology of how the camera moves, or the pacing, super invaluable. And I do think when you're in that phase of trying to close that gap and making all of the self-funded stuff, maybe not an idea to aspire to bringing those amazing people in just yet. Just work with your crew. Find the people like you who want to work with you, who want to work on each other's stuff, and just start closing that gap. But when you crowdfund your first short film, or get your first day one funding, or your first film commission funding, or New Zealand On Air funding, that's the time to write to those people and say, I've been a massive fan of your work my whole career. I just got my first funding, please. I think, do that.
Cool. Hweiling, you're a collaborator from hell. Tell us about your experience.
Right. 90% of New Zealanders are awesome to work with. Do your due diligence, and if you want to work with somebody, just speak to 3 to 5 people just to know whether they're like on the same page as you are, and what they like to work with. Oh my gosh.
The good ones, the good collaborators. Tell us about how they've helped you in your work.
Let me just talk about Homebound, which I just shot. It's a fast turnaround, low budget TV show, and the collaborators during the shoot is your DP and the production designer. Trust is a really important thing. Being able to trust each other, that you have each other's back, is really important. That's what you mean, eh? Yeah, okay, cool. I just want, there's so many parts. There's also the writing part where the values and the tastes you almost have to be on the same page to create a really good story, I guess. I'm kind of hopping around this place again.
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
And then, can I come back? My brain's a little like.
That's okay. Yep.
You know the history of me.
Go.
I'm a very much a DIYer, sort of, and that came from my first experience where when we made our first feature, I was like, I'd been doing indie stuff prior to that, but I never had a crew of 30 people, and I didn't know what a focus puller was. And so there was definitely for me, that was a very interesting and tricky learning experience, because then after that, really what I learned was like, I don't want anyone to be able to take the power away from me to tell a story or make a film. So I actually need to learn everything. I need to learn how to edit, I need to at least understand visual effects, it's not just directing. I need to know everything. I need to know about lenses, I need to know how people light. I just want to understand it all. Just so I can understand what all those, acting, everything, so I can understand what it is everyone does, but also if I've found myself in the situation, which I have many times, I can look to myself to do any of those one things, should it be required on a shoot. However, I think that was a slightly, one of the issues for our first film was that it was a Dunedin shoot and it was a Dunedin team. And I would say 98% of that team had never made a feature film before. So it wasn't just an inexperienced writer-director, it was an inexperienced crew whose standards to taste ratio may not have been quite right. And sometimes people would look at me and be like, I don't get it. It's fine, isn't it? And it's like, it's fine for that level, but it's not fine for a feature film funded by the Film Commission. And so, I think I got a little bit gun shy about sort of the collaborative process, although I've always had a team a great team, you know, my producing partner who I can rely on and talk to and bounce ideas off and get notes from and all that sort of thing. But I think as I've, you know, continued through, I've become more and more open to the collaborative side. Not that I never was open on set, but it's like now I want to know a lot more people's opinions on the script. I want to know a lot more people's opinions on the edit. And I want to talk to fellow directors, I want to talk to other editors, and I want them to tell me, and I don't want them to tell me, because once upon a time I wanted them to tell me it was good. And now I don't want them to tell me it's good. I want them to tell me what they think is wrong with it and why. Or if they can't quite put their finger on it, whatever it was that didn't work for them. And that's an ego thing of just letting go a little bit of my own ego of, oh, it's perfect, I just worked so hard on it, so just tell me it's good. To letting everyone in, and you don't have to listen to everyone's ideas, but actually there's just going to be a gold mine of little nuggets that are going to improve your film or your project or whatever that is. And that's just was quite a long, protracted learning experience for me personally.
Okay, we've got 10 minutes left, and I'm pretty sure there'll be some questions in the room. So put up your hand if you've got a question. We can keep going, but if you do have any questions, let's hear them. Nobody's got a question. Oh, Mark's got a question. Mark's first up.
What are your perspectives on how short films that you're making connect to feature film that you're making, and how do you make the short film good enough to be a standalone thing that doesn't just feel like a proof of concept or a slice of something else?
Good question, Mark.
Great question. I think, one of my favourite things about short films is that they're kind of at the forefront of the medium. You can play around and do cool shit with short films that no one will let you do with series and features yet. And oftentimes, innovations that break through in those larger spaces, they come from short films. So I think if you're making a short film to try and get a feature made, my encouragement would be to focus on the aspect of your feature that is like new and interesting, because that's going to do well in the short film space too. And then I think don't limit yourself to having to do anything that's been done before. Think about what's interesting about your feature. Maybe it's your unlikable female protagonist, or maybe it's one particular theme that is a thread of the feature, but that you really want to hammer home in the short film, or something like that. If you're engineering your short film to get your feature off the ground as a proof of concept. And I would say maybe don't do it the other way around, because I think by the time you've made your short film and you're coming up to distributing your short film, it's actually a bit late to be just beginning developing your feature. I think that thing that I was saying before about momentum is really important. If your short film is in distribution this year and you're on draft 1 of your feature, by the time your polished feature script and your market-ready director's treatment and budget and plan are all ready and in the marketplace, your short film's like maybe 2, 3 to 5 years old, and the industry's a bit fickle. It's a bit stale at that point. So I think if you're linking a short film to a feature, I think it's actually really important that your feature film is in advanced development, that you already are working on your market package before you make the short film and distribute it. And I think that is where we are a really good example for the Catalyst Fund. When we went in for Catalyst funding for our short film, we were on our 3rd draft of our feature. While we were making our Catalyst short film, we were polishing, getting our director's treatment up to scratch, writing our budget, getting ready to go to market. And before we had our world premiere for our short film, we already had our local distributor and international sales agent attached, and they were excited about the release of the short film to come. And I think that timing worked really well. And if you're not ready, you know, to go with, almost ready to go with your feature, why, you know, if you've already made the short, maybe don't make a feature of it necessarily, unless you're really passionate about it for another reason. But in terms of momentum building, I think that timing has to be there. I don't know if that even answered your question.
No, that was a good answer to a good question. So we're going to move on to the next question here.
Oh yeah, I just wondered if you could talk more about director-producer relationships.
Very briefly, I mean, the wealth, it's vital. The wealth of knowledge that someone like Alix brings to the filmmaking world that I really had no idea. You know, I'm trying to educate myself as we go. But the value, we wouldn't be making a feature now if it wasn't for our producers. We probably wouldn't have even made the short if it wasn't for our producers. So yeah, finding someone who knows about the market and is excited about producing films in New Zealand is essential.
Anything else? Any other questions out there? No more questions. Okay.
Well, I have one.
Oh,
Is
right.
there a danger of taking a kind of an ordinary feature and making a shit short film when you could just make a really good short film? Like when you know actually this is, you know, because a great short story often doesn't make a great novel. When do you know that you call it and go, actually, there's not enough in this to make it longer?
Well, I mean, certainly that is a great question and a great battle, and something that was very difficult for so we're part of this catalyst as well, where we started with a feature idea. So our struggle was, how do you make that a short, not the other way around? And I think when you expand out your short, if you've kind of conceived of it as a short originally, you know, because I've watched quite a lot of shorts now in the Show Me Shorts, and a lot of them are excellent shorts, but it's like, there's no story here for it to be a feature. It's just an excellent short. And I think you just have to be really cognizant of which one is this. And it is a bit of a backwards way to do it, to have a feature idea and go, cool, well, Catalyst is a proof of concept, you gotta make a short now. Like, that is actually a really weird thing to do, you know? That is gonna be really difficult, and certainly was for us to do that. But I think you're just gonna have more problems the other way around, where it's the short, everyone loves the short, it's won all these awards and all that sort of thing, but you only ever conceived of it as a short. Whereas if it's the other way around, I feel like you have a better chance, but then I think or at least what I had to do is I go, okay, it's not a feature though right now. What is it as a short, and how can it fit the short format? And I had to throw away a lot of the ideas that I thought were important for the feature that I was kind of trying to get into the short, but I just didn't have enough time.
Can I add to that a little bit? Just to say that I think when you're early on in your career and you're doing the closing the gap, you know, just make short films about anything that interests you or that is playing with your taste and what you want to do. I think once you get to the point where you're making a short film to get to a feature, there's often a reason why, and I think like Roseanne Liang's a great example of this. She'd already made feature films when she made Do No Harm, her Catalyst short. What she needed to prove to the marketplace was that she could do genre, you know, that she could make an action film and that was going to work. And so there was a very specific need there, and so she was making a short film for that specific need. And so I think when you have if you're reverse engineering it, if you have the feature film idea and you're looking at it and you're going, maybe there isn't a short film in here, but the question is, when I go to the marketplace and I'm pitching you as a director with this film, what is the marketplace going to be saying? And are they going to be saying, well, we've seen this person do a lot of comedy work, but this is a very serious drama. How do we know that this is going to be safe in their hands? Then the answer is you need to make a short film that is a serious drama. It doesn't necessarily have to be in this world or with these characters. It could be a different short film that you've got in your back pocket that you wrote a decade ago, and you bring it out and you polish it up and make it for now. But you're answering that question of how do we trust this person to do this thing?
I was going to say that was what Vivi is. Vivi will give you a taste of the type of director I am, and it's Papa Wants to Die is going to be in the same vein, and from an emotional point of view anyway.
Yeah, and I think, because we're going to have to close up now, but one of the things I think you can do is, if you are interested in a particular genre, if you make shorts in that genre, and they don't have to be great shorts, as long as people know that you understand the genre and the tropes of the genre, then they're going to build more trust in you when they come to look at you as a feature filmmaker. And there's somebody I know who has done that, made a whole bunch of short films, none of them were particularly successful, went on to make a feature in the genre, very successful, and now even more successful. So don't think that you have to get into Cannes, Berlin or South by, otherwise you're a failed filmmaker. That's not true. So, have hope, practice, make as many films as you can, and keep pushing. So I'd like to ask you to give a big hand to our panel here.
Brilliant. Hey, thank you, Sue. Beautifully helmed. And I think if anything's come through today, it's collaboration and just do the work and do the work and do the work with as many people as you can. We're going to celebrate some incredible work in about 15 minutes' time. We're going to take a little break. We're going to reset the room. There are some complimentary drinks. Do feel free to indulge in those. If you haven't grabbed a lanyard, please do, because that lanyard will also get you into the screening of the winning films at 6 o'clock this evening. So again, a round of applause for our filmmakers.